Hello, and welcome to your lecture on the Peloponnesian War. Grab your student notes and use them to follow along and fill in any blanks that you missed in class. Think back, or rather forward, to the years in Europe prior to World War I. Tensions were very high in Europe. Each country, nervous about invasion from her neighbors, was building up her armies and forming alliances, that is, agreements to help and defend each other with other countries. These alliances made the countries in Europe feel safer, but they also meant that when war came, it wouldn't just be between two countries, because each country would call on her allies to help. And indeed, when the spark that lit off the powder keg of Europe came in the form of the assassination of Franz Ferdinand, the entire continent, and indeed much of the world, went to war. The Peloponnesian War, which raged across Grecian lands between 431 and 405 BC, was a brutal series of conflicts between Athens, Sparta, and their allies. As with World War I, the root causes were ambition and alliances. Ambition, because both Athens and Sparta wanted to be the most powerful Greek city-state and lead all the others. Alliances, because it wasn't direct attack on each other's cities that first brought Athens and Sparta into conflict, but rather attacks on their allies. Once more, alliances are agreements between countries to help and defend each other. Countries with alliances are called allies. Alliances in and of themselves are not bad. They're often very good and ensure peace between countries, but every so often they do get countries into trouble. Athens and Sparta had joined forces during the Second Greco-Persian War to drive back the Persians. But with the war won and the Persians driven back, there was now no love lost between them. Between the years 479 and 431 BC, tensions steadily rose between Athens and Sparta. Against Spartan objections, Athens rebuilt her city walls and constructed the Long Walls, 4-mile-long walls that protected Athens' access to the sea. This was crucial because it meant that if Athens were besieged, she could still make it down to the sea where she could get all the supplies she could ever need by boat. I mentioned alliances earlier. Athens and Sparta each had her own powerful alliance of Greek city-states. The Peloponnesian League were mostly southern Greek city-states led by Sparta and bound to defend each other. The Delian League was a collection of over 300 city-states led by Athens. Although theoretically a network of alliances, the Delian League functioned more like an Athenian empire, with each city-state paying tribute to Athens in exchange for defense. City-states that attempted to leave the Delian League were forcefully brought back into membership. Fights erupted between Athens and Sparta whenever one would bully the other's allies. And despite attempts at reconciliation, like the optimistically named 30 Years' Peace, Athens and Sparta kept interfering, and tensions continued to rise. In 431 BC, the rapidly mounting straws finally broke the camel's back. Athens attacked one Spartan ally and blocked trade with another. A Spartan ally attacked an Athenian ally, and Sparta declared war on Athens. Both sides were eager to defend their cause. Athens will take over the world if we don't stop them, cried the Spartans. We must protect our Athenian way of life, responded Athens. Justified or not, the war would not be a quick or easy one for either side. The Athenian navy dominated the sea, and the Spartan army was formidable on land. But bad luck and bad decisions began to wear on Athens. The first crisis she faced was plague. The initial Athenian strategy had been to avoid the Spartan army altogether. All Athenians would shelter inside those strong Athenian city walls. There, let the countryside be burned by the Spartans, Athenians would be safe. And because of those long walls, she would still have access to the sea, so she could still get the supplies she needed, and her powerful navy could attack the Spartans wherever and whenever it wanted. This made military sense, but it ignored one crucial factor, namely what happens when you collect a bunch of people inside city walls with less than ideal sanitary conditions. What happens, of course, is plague. People in good health were all of a sudden attacked by violent heats in the head, wrote the Greek historian Thucydides, who was there. And redness and inflammation in the eyes, the inward parts such as the throat or tongue becoming bloody and admitting an unnatural and fetid breath. The bodies of dying men lay one upon another. The sacred places also in which they had quartered themselves were full of corpses of persons that had died there. It's estimated that in the 4 years the plague ravaged Athens, that between a quarter and a third of the entire population died, including the Athenian leader, Pericles. Athens was left leaderless, depopulated, and demoralized. But the war wasn't over yet. The plague that struck Athens was the result of a good idea gone bad. The Sicilian campaign, which lasted from 415 to 413 BC, was a bad idea gone worse. In the Sicilian campaign, Athens' attempt to crush Sparta ended up crushing Athens instead. A large island off the coast of Italy, Sicily was a distant but tempting target. She grew grain for Sparta and had wood that Athens wanted for her ships. When a small city pled for help from Athens against the Spartan ally of Syracuse, therefore, Athens responded by sending 3 generals, 130 triremes, and 25,000 men to invade Sicily. Things began to go wrong almost immediately. One general, Alcibiades, who had been one of the main people to convince Athens to invade in the first place, defected to Sparta. The Peloponnesian League, bound to defend their allies, sent reinforcements to the Syracusans, and when he saw the enormous army arrayed against him, the main Athenian general sent word to Athens begging them to allow him to withdraw. They responded not by letting him retreat, but by doubling his forces. The Syracusans sensed the Athenians' fear, and they struck. In the words of historian Susan Wise-Bauer, Syracusan ships blocked the Athenian retreat, whereupon 40,000 Athenian soldiers tried to escape across the island on foot to the other side. Their horrific march in the summer sun, with the enemy behind, ended in disaster. They hoped to reach the Asinaris River and launch a defense on the other side, but when they reached the shore, Thucydides continues, driven by their exhaustion and craving for water, they rushed in, and all order was at an end, each man wanting to be the first to cross. Meanwhile, the opposite bank, which was steep, was lined by the Syracusans, who showered missiles down upon the Athenians, most of them drinking greedily and heaped together in the hollow bed of the river. The Peloponnesians also came down and butchered them, especially those in the water, which was thus immediately spoiled, but which they went on drinking just the same, mud and all, bloody as it was, most even fighting to have it. At last, when many dead now lay piled one upon another in the stream, and part of the army had been destroyed at the river, and the few that escaped from there had been cut off by the cavalry, Nicias, the main Athenian general, surrendered. The Sicilian campaign was a massacre. More than 40,000 Athenians were either killed or enslaved. Things looked bad for Athens. They were only going to get worse. Alcibiades, ever the rat, defected from Sparta to Persia, where he convinced the Persians to support both sides, that is, both Sparta and Athens, in hopes that the two city-states would destroy each other. Then he defected to Athens, and Persia decided to just support Sparta. So Sparta, supported now by Persian gold, went on to defeat Athens, knock down the long walls, and set up a government of 30 men to rule the city. Although Athenians did manage to restore their democracy, their power was broken. Athens would never again regain the wealth and influence that she had had during her golden age. Sparta was now the main power in Greece, and she would maintain that power for at least the next half century until someone came along and took it from her. Next week, we'll look at that someone when we study Alexander the Great.